as you're approaching, obviously, certain ages, and do you feel pressure, and if you do, why do you think you're feeling this?
Where does this pressure come from? Is it because I actually want it? Or is it because someone else wants it for me?
Right.
And a lot of it is actually because someone else wants it for you, as opposed to maybe you grew up saying this is what the norm should look like. So in your head, in your mindset, somehow you're thinking, oh, this is how it should be, this is what it should look like, this is the timeline.
You know, a lot of my friends were literally becoming like super rich. You know, one of my friends, he wanted to become a millionaire, and I was like, what's going on? So at that moment in time, I gave my all to business.
Right.
You know, I started doing business. Church didn't see me so often.
This is true.
I think, yeah, the question kind of is applicable to everybody though, because at every point of growth or maturity, there is societal pressures that is placed on us.
Right.
Some of them are cultural, some of them are, I don't know, from other places. But yeah, even if you're, let's say, from primary school to secondary school, that is the pressure. Are you going to go to a grammar school? What are you going to achieve? What's that? That's pressure. And then from secondary school to, just so on and so forth. And then you hit, I don't know, 21, 22, or you finish uni, and then more pressure. So it wasn't enough that you've gone through your education and now you managed to grade a high grade. Now there's extra pressures. You have to actually be a good employer at work.
Many times we now start thinking, where is God's plan in all of this? And like for example, someone, if you were like me, because I came to church early, as in when I was a teenager, I was leading fellowships when I was like 16 and all that stuff. So I got to a place where my walk with God started relatively early than other people, at least with seriousness. So there are things that I thought I saw, visions I thought I saw. I thought by a certain age, this and that ought to have been happening. And I thought that was God's plan. So when we even know that we know God's plan for our lives, the timing factor, is it always what we think in the timing, or is that or do we get that wrong? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So
I think sometimes we don't always know the timing in the sense that, or the timing in which we think it's going to be is not the one in which it's going to be. Now, does that mean the plan has changed? No, the plan is still there.
Right.
But it's the patience thing, like I said. It's like you have all these visions and dreams. Now, you might have thought in your head, or when you saw it, you were thinking, oh, it's going to happen tomorrow, it's going to happen next. But no, it's going to happen down the line and in stages.
Right.
But you saw it at once, doesn't mean it's all happening at once.
Yeah. When you see all your friends getting married at 26, 27, and you 24.
Fam, I'm happy for that. That's what I'm saying. I'm happy for
All the
them.
best.
You do your thing, all the best.
when your friend bought a house at 25, and you all went there to do housewarming.
You know what's funny about that? One of my friends, she bought a house really early, and it's like I said, it's when you speak to people, you start understanding things.
Right.
She was living at her mum's house all that time, not paying rent.
Do you understand?
Saving about £1,000 a month.
A month.
All right, and in the process of time, when she buys the house, you're there thinking, "Wow, I wish I had done that." But then you're paying rent. You're paying 1,200
since you were like
you know
17.
what I mean? Exactly, right? Since you were young, right? And whereas they were able to, and then sometimes you have certain individuals who have parents guiding them, telling me, "Give me that 500 of your wages."
Yeah.
One of my friends, he got married and he had a nice marriage, right? And his dad used to take rent from him every month. When he told his dad he was getting married, that he wanted to marry this girl, his dad gave him the money back.
Yeah.
So Dad had saved it
To be
for
honest,
like
I've
3 or
got
4 years.
a similar story. I was in sixth form, right? Sixth form. This is before Olympics became a big deal. The Olympics came to London. There's a boy in the sixth form bought a house. I was like, excuse me, where is this? How is this happening? And then it turned out that his mum has been saving every little pound from christening, money, from you know, Holy Communion, whatever. She's been saving every amount, child benefits, the whole lot. So when they realized that the market's going to go up and they could buy, he bought. And it's about having that, you know, guidance, like you said, you know, from a parent or somebody that you can, you know, really listen to. But I think for me, the key was being exposed to that story. Because at that point in college, I thought, well, I am going to be somebody who knows how to keep money and not be wasteful with money, because that's something I wanted to attain. So I think sometimes we beat ourselves up a lot because of missed opportunities and like not understanding. So sometimes when it comes to relationships or whatever, you know, you're like, oh, I could have married that guy, you know, but he was all right. But, you know, I ended up...
You could have married the guy.
But you know what I mean? Like that relationship could have been a potential. However,
Could have been a good situation.
you messed up. Like you messed up with your misunderstanding
At
of
that
life.
time.
And you feel now that you feel like you've missed an opportunity because now you're hitting a certain age and all your friends and you're just being bridesmaid after bridesmaid and you're thinking, me too. But then when you look back, that's when depression can catch you, because you feel like, oh, now I need to rush and do this. If the guy wants to leave, like, you know, the relationship because he's changed his mind, you're crying because you think your whole world is breaking. Just literally yesterday, I was having this conversation with my dad. Sorry to bring my dad. You know, he's my favorite person.
Hello, Dad.
Hi, Dad.
And I was saying to him, I just hit a realization. How old is the presidents that you know in this world? They're all over 50, right? Okay, some of them are in their 40s, prime ministers, whatever. Okay, how old, you know, so sometimes we're putting a limit on ourselves in our own minds. These are self-pressured issues. However, in reality, these people have been working in the background. Like you were saying, you know, this friend of yours had nothing for 5 years. They've been working in the background, and then one day you think they've just rose to this position. It doesn't work like that. It's understanding that, you know, like the Bible said, you know, the laborer, you don't labor in vain. You just have to keep going. And the promise is the promise. And, you know, can you imagine being one of the Israelites in the desert and they're like, oh,
For 40 years.
you're going to get to the promised land. You're
Instead
thinking,
of-
oh, this promised land, Crampo, I'm tired. Like even for this promised land, I can't do it anymore. I've had enough. I can't do it.
Right.
However, you know, it's about who's, you know, they say this in preachings all the time. Whose voice are you going to listen to? What has God said over your life? And, you know, and I love that example that you felt like you saw visions. Like, you know, somebody prophesied, you're going to be a millionaire. And now you're like 40. I'm not 40, guys. By the way. Just
It doesn't matter if you're 40.
But then the issue is that you get to a certain age and you thought it would be materialized by then, and it hasn't. So then what do you do with such information?
So now coming back to things like, because you mentioned missed opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's a big
Missed
deal.
opportunities, and I think that is down to preparation or a lack of preparation.
Yes.
Sometimes building of character, like you said, understanding. Because I think having the right thing at the wrong time is such an interesting, sad situation.
Yeah.
You can have the right thing, even be with the right person, like you said,
Yeah.
at the wrong time. And then that just messes up that whole situation there. So, but then within all this, then we learn. And we learn to build character. Through all these situations, you know, coming up, like you mentioned, with the children of Israel, God could have taken them through a very shortcut to the promised land. But then he said, no, you spend 40 years doing it.
Because he wanted to build that, you know, they need to build trust in the God they serve, and they need to learn how to be obedient to God. Because there's certain characteristics, if you don't have it, your next level, you're not going to be able to handle it. You know, so I think that's
It's like,
important.
like you just said, what are some of the things that happened on the way to the promised land? They found gods. So many things happened. They doubted God. So many things. Imagine if they got to the promised land in days, in a matter of days
They
or
will not
weeks.
appreciate how
They would have turned the promised land into the land of the devil.
Yep.
Because they would have practiced all the things that they tried. On the way there, they would have taken all those things to the promised land, as opposed to them getting rid of all those things and building character or building their belief system in God by the time they get there. So
Right.
imagine a lot of things could have been different as we know it now. So sometimes when things happen that way, we just have to realize that timing is important, and timing in itself is an opportunity. The Bible says that the years that the cankerworm has eaten, God can restore. If God can restore 10 years in a week, in a day, in months, or even a year, then where is the rush? And where is the pressure really? Is it coming from outside? But then if it's coming from outside, who is the master of our minds and of our lives? You know, who decides the stance that we take or what affects us? We choose what affects us. You know, for example, like my mom is seriously, she wants grandchildren. And I'm not married yet.
Right.
Do you understand? Now, that can become something that can lead me to making the wrong decision when it comes to marriage. If I give in to that, it can be a problem. Perhaps I'm not ready to get married. Perhaps I need to focus on maybe ministry, maybe focus on myself, maybe focus on my relationship with God, maybe focus on something that I'm supposed to do that would then even create, accommodate someone else coming in. Maybe if we do it right now, we might start having certain problems based on maybe me or based on my ability to accommodate another person in my life. So these are questions that we need to ask ourselves before we run in pressure, in response to pressure and find ourselves in situations that God didn't plan for us to be in. You know? So the question now comes to, because as much as we're saying all these beautiful things, they sound nice. You understand? They sound very, oh, yes, it's true, it's true. It's nice. But when you're facing it, it's not that simple.
No.
You know what I'm saying? When your parents are mounting that pressure, or your family are mounting that pressure, or when you're seeing things that your peers are doing and whatnot, and that thing is coming to you, it's not that simple. So for people that are watching us, obviously, that are going through that now, you know, what would you say to them? How should they handle it? Obviously, we've given the background story and given the principles and, you know, the reasons and whatnot. But when you're going through that in that moment and you're feeling that pressure, like how can you control it, handle it, receive
God.
it without being pressurized into matters?
I think it's about mindset in the sense that, so, for example, right now, I get pressures from, I know you guys think I'm young and stuff, but I get pressures from like different people, different directions. They're like, oh, you've done this, you've done this, you've done this. The only thing is marriage. Eh? What's going on? Have you ever had a boyfriend? You know, there's like actual conversations, and these are like by family members that they actually come over from wherever they live. I don't want to mention, you know, to see me, to tell me that I need to get married. You know, I've had people say, you know what, come to my church, you find a man, you know, like, it's like people, like, so I'm getting all these pressures, right? However, my mindset is unwavering because I built my mindset from, you know, from day one and like intentionally. And I think one thing we have to realize, everything takes intention. If you refuse to internalize pressure and you're like, do you know what, I am getting this pressure, but no, I would rather have an understanding that I would rather make the right choice at the right time than let someone push me into the wrong choice. If you remember that the fact that whoever it is that has pushed you into this choice is not going to be with you when you're reaping the consequences of this choice. And for me, that's why, like, it doesn't matter where the pressure is coming from. I refuse to internalize it. And how do I do it? If I find myself maybe like starting to think about different things, or like, oh, you haven't done this, you haven't done this, I remind myself about, first of all, last month you thought you couldn't do that and now you've done that. You know, previous things in the past where, like, you know, the thing is, how well do you trust God? So if you've had issues or had situations in your past where, you know, you thought something wasn't going to happen and then it did, and if you think about how it happened, you're like, wow, that's amazing. So remind yourself about those things and just remember that it's going to be fine. Be patient. Be patient with yourself. I think people tend to be patient with other people, but not themselves.
That's true.
You have to be patient with yourself. You have to be forgiven. Yes, you made some missteps. Yes, you made some mistakes. You made some choices that might have led you to this point. But guess what? That's in the past. Move on. Forgive yourself and be patient. That's what I would say.
You're going to say something.
Yeah, you know, patience is the key. And, you know, one of the things, not to sound preachy again, but, you know, this is...
I think this is a preaching episode.
I think that's what it is.
So I can preach on.
Where's the debate? Where's the fight?
No, there is no, I think there's no fight on
today,
this
no?
one. Not on this one. Not on this one.
But, you know, faith. And, you know, Bible talks about faith and how faith produces patience. Listen, I'm telling you.
That is a very interesting point. Faith produces patience.
Yeah, 100%. Because
if you have faith, you'll be patient.
Yeah, because inside you, you know you've got it. You know, there's a knowing, there's a knowledge. So once you operate with that knowledge, you just know you're waiting. The patience is that you know it's gonna come. So it's not.
So you're not bothered.
Yeah, it's not depression. It's not like, oh my God, is it going to come? Right. No, you know it's going to come. Yeah. It's only a matter of time. Right. But inside you, you'll be fulfilled. And you know, and I've seen that that's what works for me. It's worked for me as I put the word of God to work, you know, and you know, especially meditation sessions. I bang on about these all the time. Like, thank God for Pastor Chris to unveil this to us, because by the time you meditate and spend time speaking God's word over your life consistently, it grabs a hold of your heart. Right. And once that grabs a hold of your heart, you just know that your future's set. So, 100%. Yeah, I'll say that.
Very good. Any last words from you?
I think it's important, though, to forgive yourself, like you've all really said. And then to free yourself from failures that you've you know, come. I remember clearly one statement that popped into my mind is God said, "Would you still love me?" So when I give you these things, would you still love me? And if I don't give you these things, would you still love me? These things that I want and I'm chasing, will that hinder me from the love for God? Or, you know, what would that do to me? And it's about faith again. My faith in God allows me to trust God. And that trust means regardless of what I want and what I have now and what I can see with my naked eye, God's plan for me is good, and he will cause all things. He doesn't cause things to happen, because these things that has happened in my journey, he will cause all of them to work for my good. So I rest assured in that. So yeah, for me, that's what kind of carries me through, really.
Excellent, excellent. You know, success is measured at different levels of life. You can be 10 and be very successful. Because 100%. You're exactly where you're supposed to be, doing what you're supposed to be doing, you know, how, you know, all that stuff. I think sometimes we equate certain things with success and with happiness, and then that's the dangerous part. Unless I have been able to materialize A, B, C, and D, I'm not happy. But we are supposed to be able to enjoy the moment. And
100%.
in thinking too much about these things, we then take away that joy because we want to see. We want to see, you know. So being able to know exactly where you're supposed to be in life is very important. At every moment in time. That's the only way to know if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and if you know you've attained, so to speak, the things that you ought to have attained at that moment in time. Anyway, that's all the time we have today. Thank you very much for this preachy, solemn.
Sometimes you just need to reflect. You know, Stella.
It's nice. It's nice.
I feel like this should be on the show on the other set. Where they have these kind of conversations. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Until next time, keep watching Love Word UK and stay tuned.